Just waiting on one more, and there we go. Awesome, very good, very excited. Today's Triumph Tuesday. Gosh, we have so much to talk about, but good morning, everyone. This is Carol, so AKA Naughty Boss, live on a beautiful sun morning day, bright sunshine with two
Sistas. Hey, good morning, everyone. It's Janis, aka Wellness Diva 5.0, Triumph Tuesday. And as I woke up this morning, sitting at the breakfast bar, and you get those little town papers, and I kind of like flipping through them and see what's happening around town, and all the different restaurants in the area, of course, getting ready for the holidays and New Year's. And then you see the ads in the back. And sometimes when you see the caption of an ad and it's just like, you kind of go, huh? Like, what is that about? Well, the ad was, and this to me was a funny headline, but of course, when you read it, as I'll explain in a moment, you'll understand. But the caption of it was National Federation of the Blind seeking to buy used vehicles.
Okay.
And I'm like, why?
Right.
Okay, so that was the funny headline, but they're doing it to raise funds. If you read the whole, and it was a short, but just think about that for a moment when you're just kind of waking up and you're just flipping through stuff and you're like, what?
How's that working out? Yeah, I don't get that. Right, absolutely. And a lot of times with different advertisement, there are a lot of bloopers. It could be a highway board sign. It could be an ad that comes through, and you wonder who's proofing this stuff, especially where in this case you're talking about, raising money for blindness, and then a vehicle involved, which doesn't, when you think about it, doesn't really make sense until you actually digest the whole thing.
Right. And which just goes to show you that never take something for face value. Read it first. I think because we're always, and I say as a general society, social media, different news outlets, they're quick to pounce on that headline. I mean, think about that headline.
Absolutely.
Read the whole thing through.
Yeah, you have to. A lot of times, we're that society, we're impatient, we're so used to a quick blurb. And so many times people will either share information that they think it might be about based on the headline alone. And that's where there's a lot of, I would say we're in a society of nothing but miscommunication and misinformation and disinformation, all kind of wrapped up in one, because people are too much in a rush. They don't take the necessary time to review different information to make sure it's correct or accurate or spelling. And, we're too rushed. And especially during this season, for a lot of people, it's difficult. It's a hurdle to slow down. It's a hurdle to be in the moment. It's a hurdle to be patient. We're just too much, the hustle and the bustle, which, a lot of times we joke about, but it's very real for a lot of people that they just don't take that necessary time to just live, to breathe, to be in the moment. That sense of calm, just like be with people, talk with, got real conversations. But, it's also a busy travel time. So people are looking at their phones. I can't tell you, every time I crack up when I go, when we're traveling, especially during the holiday times, and you see so many people, even with a physical paper, but a lot of times, obviously, with the devices, and they're walking, but they're looking down. And, mishaps, bumping into people, bumping into walls, we need to pay more attention. Mental clarity is no joke. You need that.
You really do. And, think about that act of I have here's my cell phone. I'm sure you have yours. And I keep it right next to me so I can monitor what's going on when we're live on Facebook or whatever may be happening. But if I am looking down at my phone, I am not in the present having this conversation via Zoom going live on Facebook. I am not present in the moment. So when you are not present in the moment and you're chatting with somebody, that communication aspect of engagement, like I could hear what you're saying, but if I am not in the moment listening, there's a difference.
There's a difference between hearing or listening. And I mean, we all do it.
Oh,
because
sure.
our brains are constantly moving, constantly kind of, just the alerts, or we're thinking 5 steps ahead of something. So we're in that moment, they're like, okay, what's the next thing I gotta get to? What's the next project, the next chore? Where do my kids gotta be? Do I have any appointments? While you're all still, doing what you're doing. And a lot of times that is where the miscommunication or the everyone's always in that, fear of not hearing something, that fear of missing out. Well, a lot of times we're missing out due to our own accord, due to our own impatience of not being in the moment, being present in the moment. And I think one of the greatest gifts, especially around the holiday season and something to triumph over, is the present. Now, meaning, when I talk about the present, what is the present? What is the ultimate gift? What is the ultimate thing? Well, the present is the present. So if you look at that word 2 ways, being in the moment is the gift, is the present. It's not, we're all wrapped. You can say we're all different presents. We're all wrapped differently. We look differently. We add value in different ways. We add communication in different ways. We bring to the table, hopefully mostly people are adding value to whatever they're chatting about, but we are the gift, we are the present. We always got to remember that, sometimes the greatest gifts of presence is not wrapped, it's not in a box, it's within us. And I think we miss that piece, and especially, the biggest one is just kind of letting yourself revert back to being that child, especially if you have the pleasure of being around children during the holidays. They're, the stuff that comes out of their mouths, number one, are funny and pretty on point, because they don't live in the walls or the barriers that adults do. So they can just blurt a lot of times, what's really on their heart. And those are the most precious moments that you're going to get. Oh my God, I remember doing that. Or it's going to bring you to another place in time that really is going to enhance the moment that you're currently in, but also bring the enjoyment of that memory of what did happen versus maybe what's going on right now. So there's so many things. I think that we, that for me, the biggest triumph, being that it's Triumph Tuesday, with the holidays, is really just making sure that I'm present, that I'm in each moment. Now, yesterday when I went on a beach horse ride, which, at times was I'm not going to lie, was a little nerve wracking, because we have got a lot of, from the storms and whatnot, we have a lot of erosion on the beaches. So when the beach is in that kind of condition, they don't allow the horses to be on the beach. So you're on the beach, but because there's so much erosion, it's almost like quicksand, I guess, for the horse. And there's different pockets of where, especially if there's a body of water, you got the ocean coming in, the waves are coming in, but then there are certain areas where the water's collecting, which, is a key indicator that the soil, the sand is very loose in that area, and, the horse can be injured. So there were times where we were going, and, it could be like 3 to 6 feet drop to the edge of the beach. Now you're on sand, but you got to remember you're on a horse. So, there were some areas that we were on a narrow. I'm like, oh my God, get me through this, get me through this. And once I kind of went through the first time, then turning around and coming back, it wasn't as bad, but it a little nerve wracking. So I was like, oh my God, I can do this. I can do this. Well, those are the kind of the moments, sometimes during the holiday season, we have those scary moments. Maybe it's, someone's flying for the first time. Maybe they're entertaining for the first time. Maybe it's the first Christmas of, an engaged couple, married couple with a new baby. There's all these things that are, you want to be in that moment and have that perfect time, but we're in fear that, is it going to go right? Is it going to be the perfect holiday? Well, let me tell you something. There is no perfect holiday out there. There just isn't. You can't, because you got all these variables, right?
Well, that is true. Think of when you're preparing for the holidays, like, people doing their baking and, I got to do all this baking. I have to do this.
Right.
And I was that person. I'm just going to say up front, of course I was that person. I did all sorts of chip cookies. Like I had to have, so many cookies. And I think back on that. And to me, it was the joy of being in the present baking, because I enjoy that. But I think when we put those pressures on, oh, I have to do this, I have to do that. And, I'm sure most of those moments I was present, but was I really present with people around me as I'm driving myself nuts baking, making sure I have all the ingredients and all that kind of stuff.
And so how do we try and prevent, how do we renegotiate and still have that, what we consider, just a holiday, a Christmas, a Hanukkah, whatever it may be, that is filled with that spirit of goodness and hope and dreams and stars and sparkles. And I say simplify, you can still, what we've done, when we go up north and we're baking, we've really cut back on the types of cookies. So if you are, within your neighborhood or your own family, go back to, and, we used to do that years ago, that in order to get that variety, the family would get together and each would make a couple different dozen of whatever cookies, and then you marinate them all together, and everyone would come home with a nice variety platter. And I think we've gotten away from that, partly because of, society, the way it's been with, the different aerosols that are out there with people getting ill. So, we've gotten away from that. So I say simplify. If you don't have the opportunity to, bake with other people, just say, what are my top 3 cookies or my top 3 baked goods that I want to make? And focus on that to simplify. So you're still getting those tastes, because we talk, season's all about taste and texture. Simplify it, pull it back a little bit. Because we talk about this, as we age, we just don't eat as much. We don't eat as much. And unless you have, a big crowd coming, or you plan on making like smaller tins of them and handing them out to your neighbors, friends, or family, whatever it may be, that's a lot of work to go through, and kind of like exhaust yourself, because, baking can be exhausting, believe it or not. And then you're like, oh, that work, was it worth it? So you want to make sure that you are doing things that are meaningful. They're all meaningful, that's going to bring you joy, and share that with those that you love to bring that joy together, and simplify it. So it's like, even the meals today, we can remember growing up, and of course, when we were first married, we all did the same thing. Like, there's 1,000 different side dishes. Wow, how much can you really eat?
Well, that's true. And look at the evolution of the dinner plate. Okay. I remember living in Florida, and I had to buy a new set of dishes, and I found this set that I loved, and something told me, well, let me buy one plate, because they had it, like in the 4 in a box, but then they had like the singles.
Yeah.
Something told me, well, let me buy one plate. And I don't know why I thought this, but I'm like, let me go with it. I can always come back and buy more, of course. Beautiful design. I mean, it just, I had pictured in my mind what I had wanted. I was so excited. I'm like, oh my God, this is it. So I bring it home, and I took out my set of dinner plates, put the dinner plate in there, and closed the door.
Couldn't shut it.
Couldn't shut it. It was open probably about this much, I don't know, about 4 inches. And I thought, and I looked at that, and I'm like, that dinner plate is so big. We grew up in the, clean dinner plate club, right?
Right.
And I remember taking it out, excuse me, and looking at the dinner plate thinking, I could fit a lot of food on here. That is insane.
Yeah.
So needless to say, I did not buy. So think of that. New dinner plates coming out that don't fit in your cabinet. What is that telling you? People are buying them.
And they're filling them.
They're filling them.
Which is not good for your gut health. And, I like the idea, and you've done it, and I've done it a couple of times, is, if I'm at a buffet or whatever at someone's home, depending on what's, and if I'm like, if there's foods that, that I know I'm going to have intolerance to, if there's like a lot of dairy, whatever it may be, I'll just ask them, oh, do you have, by any chance, do you have a smaller plate, like the lunch size?
Yeah, I do that a lot.
And exactly. And that way, I'm still feeling like I'm getting that meal, but because of limitations, whether it's something that I know it's not going to agree with me, I've got to be very careful with some stuff. And, sometimes you don't know the ingredients, but you still want to make sure the hostess knows that you're enjoying the food or whatever. I'll ask for a smaller plate and still make it look, like I'm getting a great meal, which I am. I'm just getting smaller amounts. But we talked about that. We talked about that last week, that we are in a society of oversize, king size, oversized, supersize. And the bottom line is our guts don't need that. They do need good nourishment. We know already, especially during the holidays, for those that have these different sensitivities or allergies or whatever, that we want to be mindful of what we're putting in. We still want to be able to enjoy the flavors of the season and all of that. But we really have to think about, what, I guess I go back to what we were brought up on. Like, there's starving children in Africa. There's starving children here. You see those green things on the tree, you think that's money? Money doesn't grow on trees. And those things that, our parents kind of instilled in us, now carries over and has carried over. And you realize that, what? Haste makes waste. Like, we don't need to supersize our lives. We don't need to supersize our food. We don't need to supersize our presence. When we simplify things, we actually find that we actually have more enjoyable time to relax, maybe put on that funny movie, play that board game, have that conversation and be in the moment, not worrying about, did I make enough food? Which I don't think a woman ever truly can let go, because we're always nervous that, we don't have enough, but actually we do.
Right. There's always more than enough. And,
Yeah.
The other night, I think it was Friday night, when I just made a very simple dinner, and it reminded me of, and it was Frank and beans, by the way, because I love Bush's Steakhouse baked beans.
Mm-hmm.
Having them every now and then. That's like a winter type of meal for me. You talk about the seasons.
Right.
So I made that, and as I'm sitting down eating, and I thought to myself, it reminded me when we were kids, and like Friday, Saturdays, and sometimes Sunday nights, I remember having Frank and beans, and that was like around the time, right around this time. And it was, when the skating season was veering up, and, the household was so crazy with Christmas, and, and I kind of like smiled thinking about that. And Gary's like, what's wrong? I said, no, I'm just, thinking about
A memory
that, and being around the table, and, Fran and Victor loosening up the salt shaker. And
yes, our brothers used to love pranking at the dinner table, and you and I were usually the brunt of the prank.
yes, yes, I was. Yes, we were.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we were easy prey. I don't know, but when you have a big family, that's what happens. And just remembering too that when you have that bigger family, and you got to remember, back in the 50s and 60s, you didn't run to the grocery store every other, like a lot of times most households had one car, one vehicle. So you weren't running to, oh, I forgot something, run to Walmart, run to Publix, run to, Stop and Shop, whatever it may be, make those 1,000 different trips. Like, you did literally your grocery shopping with a list, and you kind of lived to the penny of what you were buying. And, but when you have a big family and, you're gathered around that table, and, we just learned that you better get it on your plate or it'll be gone. So I think back and I crack up to those things. And of course, the pranks, the kicking under the table, the pinching, the salt shakers, the stealing of the food. That was another thing. Like,
oh, I hated that.
Like, oh my God. And the next day I know, like, wait a minute, what happened to my piece of chicken? Whatever it may have been. They love to do that. So yeah, our brothers pranked on us a lot. That's okay.
And, the last time, well, one of the last times I saw Victor, and we were talking, all these different kid stories, all the different things I remembered. And of course it came up, you know, that I never had second dates with boys that came to the house because Fran and Victor would always, they'd scare the living daylights out of my date, and I wouldn't be asked out on a second date. And Victor, I remember calmly said something like, "Well, they just weren't worthy." And I looked at him and I'm like, and I said, you really put thought into that, meaning you were here. I'm thinking that you were just being mean to me.
Well,
I mean, I'm sure there was
there was a little jab in there because they were notorious for doing that. And
well,
you know, back then, you know, you had a date that came to the door and it was like a presentation. Like, you know, the parents would be there, our parents would be there, the brothers would be there. And I would be mortified. I'm like, oh my God, can we just get out of this house quickly?
and I remember that one boy that mommy had met at the gas station, and oh, I've got a daughter for you. And she set up this date. And even though mommy set it up, of course, they were at the door, but then Fran and Victor come down. And I remember Fran in the background, and he had his toy rifle or whatever. And I remember thinking, oh, Lord.
Yeah, and the funny thing about it is a lot of, for me, because, you know, Nick was only a couple of years ahead of me, you know, I would be dating boys in his grade or people he knew. So that made it even worse. It just made it worse. So, you know, once he graduated, I was like, oh, free at last, I'm free at last, because he couldn't really supervise at that point. But, you know, there's something to say that, you know, the way we were brought up, you know, we looked out for each other, and, you know, thinking back on it now, they had some fun joshing us, but at the same time, they were doing it because, you know, they were being protective of their younger sister. So it is kind of cute. It is kind of cute when you think about it. And, but, you know, go ahead.
And the final funny thing about that is, I remember when I became a freshman, and of course, you know, you're in school the first day of high school, and you go to your different classes, and every teacher, we had to like introduce ourselves. What is your name? Janis Casella. Oh God, Casella? Do you have a brother Victor and a sister Carol Sue and a brother Fran? And I'm like, yeah. Oh God, I thought I got rid of the Casellas.
Yeah, yeah. And it, you know, well, you know, we had our share of laughter in school and pranking in school. You know, pranks back then, they were the good old fashioned kind of pranks, not what's going on in today's society, but just good old fashioned kooky stuff. And, you know, I'm sure that, you know, I had a few really good teachers that I was truly blessed, that, you know, influenced my life and really enjoyed seeing our family, because back then you had bigger families too, and seeing, you know, the different generations of one family coming through the school system. And I always wondered, you know, as life went on, you know, their thought process. I wish, you know, some of those teachers would have journaled that piece of being a teacher, seeing multiple generations of one family come through their classroom, you know, and their stories have got to be amazing, you know, because we talk about, well, life is one big story and one big journey, you know, and broken up into several different things. And you often wonder what went through their mind when they're like, oh my God, there's one more coming through. And really understanding that, you know, and them realizing that everyone's always unique and different, and no two are the same. But yes, when you have a reputation that, you know, that yes, that's the word I'm thinking of, but I can't say it. But whatever it is, you know what I'm talking about. You know, you wonder where the thought process is. Like, oh, is this one going to be the good one, or the one that's going to challenge me? So yeah, there was a few of us that challenged teachers, no doubt. And you know what I say to you know, I would be one of them. You know, I look at that in a different and unique way, not because I was one being, you know, challenging that person, but, you know, I would hope that, you know, teachers that do have that student that challenges them, you know, really embraces that, because maybe they have to learn differently. Maybe they're more inquisitive. Maybe they're really trying to understand whatever subject matter, you know, that you're teaching about. And I go back to the first challenge I gave to a teacher that I personally can remember. And I was actually in second grade at St. Joe's in Hartford. And I remember it was Sister Alexis. And I remember, back then, you stayed in one classroom, but even at a young age, maybe another teacher would come in or whatever. And it was science. Now, so if you're at a parochial school, you've got, that religion class, and then you have the science class. And I remember now back then, which now they certainly don't do anymore, is, especially the nuns, they had those rulers out. If you were misbehaving, that ruler was in hand. And I remember raising my hand and asking the question. We were actually talking about evolution. And, I kept saying, well, I'm thinking to myself, we just left religion to learn about, and it was probably this time of year, we were talking about the birth of Jesus. And then we also talked about Adam and Eve being the first man and woman on the planet. And now you go to, have another subject matter of science, and we're talking about the apes. And I'm like, well, was Adam and Eve an ape? And the nun just like, it was like blasphemy for her. And I says, well, trying to, and I was young. And I still remember that. Like I couldn't grasp, like we're talking about the ape man being first on the planet in one moment. And, right after we just talked about Adam and Eve, not making any sense to me. I was escorted to the principal's office, because I challenged, I didn't understand it. And, back then, think about that nun. I mean, they're teachers, but they're also a reflection of the religion that they're in group that they're with, the nuns. And now you've got a child probably asking a question that, maybe she couldn't quite answer, or, thought it was sinful that I did even ask the question. But I remember going down to the principal's office. And I remember that was such a scary thing. We always said there was a spanking machine in there, and it was just, and so of course they had to call mommy, and
Oh boy.
that went over like HELL. And she said, what is wrong with my daughter asking that question? And she was right. What was wrong with it? There was nothing wrong with it, but it was just one of those things where you caught the teacher off guard or whatever. So when you have those challenging students, you wonder, after, especially when you get, a family coming through, the thought process of that nun or that teacher, whoever it may be, to see the different personalities and, ones that may challenge you a little bit more intellectually, or asking you those questions that you're not prepared for. That probably happens more often than not.
Exactly. And that made me think of good old Mrs. Lee, the English teacher at Cromwell High School.
Yeah.
And if you asked a question like, can I do this or can I do that? Her response was, I don't know, can you? Because she would say the proper way to ask is, may I?
Yes.
Whatever the question is. So she happened to one day say, can I just have a moment? And of course, me just being me, blurted out, and this is so unlike me, and that's why everybody was cracking up and why I got a detention. And I said very seriously, I don't know, can you? And Mrs. Lee, Janis Casella, oh, you go to, she wrote out the detention, go. Yeah.
Oh yeah, she was a woman of very few words, but very on point, very postured. I thought when I think back to her, she's a very tall woman, and always dressed to, just perfectly dressed, very professional, short haircut, and she just always was like precision in motion. She just professional to the max, but always very stunning, like stylish, but she was a stern teacher, and I learned a lot from her. The other teacher I really liked was Mrs. McCarthy. I don't know if you had her. She taught the typing. Remember where you get to learn how to type? Victor drove her nuts. I remember her that. She goes, that your brother, he just drives me crazy. And I don't know, he was, probably acting like a goofball, but she would always say that, and I absolutely adored her. And then there's just it's so funny when you start to look back, and you start talking about, especially during the holiday season where you're gathering with your siblings and you talk about the different teachers you had or whatnot, the stories that, it incites. It's so funny. And I often wonder, what it's like on the flip side for that teacher talking about different families that have gone through their classroom. It's kind of neat.
Yeah, it was. And I remember when she, called me up, to get the detention. And of course, everyone's like, yeah, and I'm doing the high fives. And she said, you're not just getting one, here's one for tomorrow. So I actually.
Yeah, I mean, she didn't mince words, like, and there was no discussion, just, some teachers you could kind of negotiate. There was no negotiating with her. She'd bam, bam, bye, see you, don't let the door hit you on the ass on the way out, like that. She was just that blunt.
Yes, she was. But
yeah, there was a very sweet side to her. You didn't often see it, but she was so stern. But she's just one of those teachers you'll always remember, and I think that's pretty cool. So we would ask our viewers, like, think of those things. Think about your passion, people that influenced your life or that was part of your life. And when you are sitting around the holiday table this season, start talking about that fun stuff. Bring back those memories, because those memories, believe it or not, will really spark the next generation to ask questions to you about when you were in school, or were you a troublemaker? Did you get detentions? What subject matter were you strong in? And it really sparks that conversation twofold, because it gives you the opportunity to ask them, like, what is your strong subject matter? Like, do you have a favorite teacher? And it really just, there's so many ways that we can impact our conversation and triumph over the hustle and the bustle of the holiday, and just be in the moment, be present in the moment, and just enjoy each other.
Absolutely. And on that note, like Carol said, go to our website, leave us a voice message, let us know about your special memories, or you can also send us in, of course, a contact form, and we will definitely respond to you. And this is Tuesday, December 13th. And as we triumph over those different little things in our life, take time to be in the present. My name is Janis, aka Wellness Diva 5.0, and I'm with TwoSistas,
and this is Carol, so aka Naughty Boss, about to get some pickleball on, get some movement on. Remember, always think about your health and wellness. That's part of who you are. And get that movement in. Don't let the hustle and the bustle of the holiday have you fall behind. Keep doing what you're doing. But you know what? The more movement, the better you're going to feel. So I'm going to get my movement going on, and we hope you have a great day. We will see you tomorrow for Wellness Wednesday. We don't know, because that's one of those days where sometimes we don't know what time we're going on. So we're going to work that out a little bit later and let you know. But you guys have a great Tuesday, and think of those things. What have you already triumphed over during this holiday season? I bet you triumphed over a lot more than you think about. So let's get that going, and we will see you tomorrow. Take care, everyone. Have a good day.
Bye, everyone.